Call the city council work session to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter. Here. Steelgrave. Here. Vining. Germaine. Here. Lamore. Present. Felder. Here. Mayor Clark.
Present. So we have a couple items on our work session. City Manager Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor, and council members. The first item we'll be discussing is the residential housing strategy implementation planning discussion. And Deputy Economic Development and Community Development Director Matt Vanasacker will lead the discussion.
Welcome, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Honorable Mayor, City Council, Matt Vanasacker, Deputy Director of Economic Community Development and Neighborhood Services Coordinator for the city. Tonight, we're just going to give a kind of an overview, touch base on where we left off on this discussion as it's ongoing. And I know Mark, during our March 18th presentation, said we would be back with a couple different work sessions just to talk about this item further, seeing as there are so many different components to it. So the goal for this evening is to lay out the recommended action steps that were included within the strategy, just refresh all of you on those items, determine your priorities, where you see in terms of the priority of each of the items listed, and that really will help us kind of navigate and determine where to put efforts here in the short, near, and long term moving forward. And then we'll recap some steps that have actually already kind of happened, whether it be from the plan directly that were kind of low hanging fruit or organically that have come through. So we will, as we walk through some of the items, we will be asking for your input and asking you to rank those items. So just be aware that that's kind of the direction for this evening. So where we left off, March 18th, 2024 was when we had the presentation from Rowan Brady, then with Beckett and Rader, who did the study for us, did the strategy, provided 3 overarching goals within that strategy, and then also provided 8 recommended action areas outlined in what they determined was a 5-year plan. There were a number of other considerations, as you remember, in that plan, tons of data and tons of items. But really our focus this evening is to talk about the recommended strategies and rank those priorities. So we'll start with the overarching goals. The 3 goals, first and foremost, provide opportunities for homeowners or new buyers to make necessary repairs to buildings in poor condition. That kind of touches on the concept of aging in place, a lot of those, home renovation projects, that sort of thing. Second, encourage the development and financing of smaller homes, including single family and medium density typologies, such as townhomes or duplexes. And then last but not least, focused on modest increases in density around the downtown. So those were kind of the 3 overarching areas that they saw based on evaluating our strengths and weaknesses as a community. And what they said were the 3 recommended action items. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what are your thoughts on those 3 goals? And do you agree with the goals? Do you think there's anything that we're leaving out? Is there anything that kind of ascends to the priority level of being included in that grouping?
I really like the direction of all the goals. I would like clarification on one of them regarding what we feel is appropriate action to be taken regarding goal 1 on behalf of the city. Of course, we have neighborhood enterprise zones that have tax incentives for investing in your home so that your financial burden isn't increased while the quality of your home is. I know that we have the Fix program as part of our CDBG plan, which we're also voting on this evening. But I want to just get a little bit more detail on what we feel the city's role is in executing the first part of that strategy.
Great. Awesome. We can, the rest of the presentation kind of touches a little bit on some of those specifically, but we can also, provide that moving forward. So,
To follow up with that, that's sort of if it was connected to any of them, that's the one that would be connected to. We've put a lot of money in terms of city infrastructure, especially in water abatement, but also with the way in which we've managed our tree canopy very actively over the last couple of years, especially with many of the storms that have come through the area, to do preventative maintenance to try and ward off some of the damage to the homes that's being done before that. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to expand the goal to include that, which might encompass certain programs of ours, like the Water and Wastewater Department have with their footing drain shutoff disconnect program. That's going to help in the future prevent damage to private property and prevent that from, instead of just being on the repair focused mindset, this would expand it to include a preventative component as well. Those would be the thoughts that I would have. Thank you.
Michelle?
I just want to add to that, and it might be a stretch, but there's a lot of homes in Monroe that have trees in their backyards that are very dangerous, and they simply can't afford to have them removed. Maybe we can come up with some sort of solution to help them to get those trees removed, because one of those trees falls is going to impact an entire neighborhood. So if there's some way to figure that in, I'm not sure how. I don't have the answer, but
Support that.
is a thought.
Councilwoman, I would support that.
Any thoughts or comments at this point? I think these were great discussions. Like, how's it all fit? How's it all fit together as far as with other programs we're doing? We've shared in some conversation that, in fact, Michelle, that it's been not that long ago that we thought, with the last storm here a couple, 3 years ago, of the number of trees that were in, I'll say the terraces, but those in the backyard and made some significant damage. And I know that the staff had looked at that. There are programs across the state that some communities do. How they fund it and how they do it is really kind of the details. So I think it's something for the consideration. And Andrea, I think your comments are great. How do we provide the opportunity, internally with our resources? I know, and I'm sure Matt's going to get through the whole variety of things that were on this list that are existing we're doing, but also things that are proposed. And I think the NEZ, we've had the NEZ program for many years, and I can see that somebody's smiling at me, but it's never really got off the ground. I think the biggest thing with that is we really have to push that in a marketing sense and have neighborhood, that's in this proposal, having neighborhood community group meetings. And I think that other part of that is we just thought that people would do that and then come to us, but there's that thing called paperwork and process that just is, quite honestly, it's a lift for many people because the way in which some of the grants and things are written, but the idea of how they can invest in their property. And of course, when you improve your property, the taxes of the property go up, but it can be held in abeyance, that increase for, I think it's up to 10 years or something is the NEZ. And we have that in two sections. And I think that's something that's right here we've existing, but not really implemented. I think that would be a priority, but that's having a conversation with the community and offering the staff to be that conduit between the submission and then with the assessor's office and then getting it to the state to make sure it qualifies. Right. So this is my comments. I think those are opportunities. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Brian.
Yeah, Your Honor, I agree with you on the NEZ zones. Ever since I've been either in Citizens Plan Commission or here, we've always talked about the NEZ zones. I thought they were great assets, but they're only assets if people use them. And I think that half the problem is people don't really understand nor really know about them. And that can be a problem. So, but maybe just the communication from our part, just getting it out to the residents, that can really increase the awareness of those attributes and what they can benefit from those. So, yeah, I agree with you 100% in the NEZ zones.
Okay. Continue.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's really great feedback. And I think a lot of those kind of statements show up in some of the parts within the 5-year plan and really will help kind of navigate that priority and priority ranking moving forward. So without further ado, we will get into the 8 elements of the 5-year plan. So there's 8 elements, 18 steps that they were recommending inclusion as part of the city strategy. So the first that I want to talk about is neighborhood improvement. So the Neighborhood Improvement Act, PA 208 of 1949, amended in 2007 and again in 2018, allows a municipality the ability to designate a neighborhood for targeted rehabilitation. So this is a little bit different than the NEZ in the sense that the similar way is that you're putting the district boundary together, but it's really the onus is on the neighborhood itself. The neighborhood creates a tax increment financing district that would really help kind of support some improvements within the neighborhood. So specifically, it would allow the unit to acquire and develop property within a certain neighborhood. We hear a lot about dilapidated properties and that sort of thing. This would allow the neighborhood to really take ownership of their boundaries and make some of those decisions as well in that program. So they are specifically saying in this that as a first step in this regard that we should target Census Tract 321, which is from Rossler Street east to Norwood, south of the river. So that's the area that they're calling out specifically as kind of that first section. But then they're also calling out a number of, property maintenance and what we would deem as a blight sweep, which we did a few years ago, in a number of different census tracts, specifically Census Tract 318, 319, and 320 in various parts of the city. And how they kind of came up with that list was they looked at our number of blight citations and targeted those areas that had higher areas of blight citations and put them on this list. So that's one recommended action is using some targeted incentives in some of those areas that, the neighborhood would ultimately also have a say in. So that's the kind of the first recommended action item, and that's labeled as neighborhood improvement.
So as you move forward, I know, think about neighborhood improvements. One thing I probably should have added, we have the outreach that we have in support of community entities. Of course, as we know, the labor organizations have had to cultivate community, and I think that's a valuable asset that we have of getting engaged. And it's not just the city coming in, it's other residents and other community members coming in to make betterment within those that might need some support. And then I think about the RAMP program as well. And now that's a separate program that's managed not by the city, but by labor and other organizations. So I think that's a great component as well. We've had success there. I think we kind of marry up some of those other activities that we were talking about internally. I think we'll have even better, greater results and partnerships.
Absolutely.
Before I forget. Thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll move on to section 2, which is financing. And specifically, they're calling out financing in regards to assisting with needed housing repairs. The other thing, too, obviously, we have at our disposal through CDBG is our down payment assistance program. It's a fairly small amount when you consider about $10,000 to support the entire city. But that's something we're working through our policy and procedures, and we expect to have some very eager candidates for that program here shortly. But talking about financing in the sense of partnering with an FDIC lender, a local lender, a company that would provide some payment assistance programs, specifically in partnership with the city of Monroe, to really kind of help in that regard. So that was one item that they had included. They've seen it leveraged in some other communities, and so they recommended that as a solution for us as well to explore. We've had some good conversations with some local lenders here recently. Some local lenders were a part of the initial stakeholder engagement process for this. And we know that there's a number of other organizations, you think about like Habitat for Humanity in particular, that has some low interest loan payments that are available for their home buyers and that sort of thing. So we know that the appetite's there. There's also incentive for the lending institutions to offer some of these programs up to meet with their FDIC requirements. So Section 3, which is really, I think, one of the most comprehensive sections that we saw laid out in the plan itself, revolves around zoning. And there's numerous items that were called out in the plan. I think Rowan, during the presentation on March 18th, he outlined a number of different of the suggested kind of action steps. And there was some really great dialogue back and forth on those items. I will say, and this comes up a little bit later in the conversation, we have received a grant to be able to implement some of these zoning changes into the code itself. We don't anticipate starting that until we have the blueprint set in August, but we do anticipate that we'll have some zoning changes that will be coming before the board and before the council here. So as you can see, just some that are called out, in terms of increasing density, decreasing the cost that it would take to develop certain items, just based on the fact that we have certain setback requirements and that sort of thing within our code. So moving on to Section 4, skipped a little bit there. Historic districts. So as Michigan's third oldest community, we have a number of historic buildings. I don't think that's news to anyone here, but as such, we have access to certain incentives, particularly on the housing side for a lot of these structures. And so Beckett and Rader has suggested a number of different elements to take, action steps to take within this kind of concept of historic districts. And really kind of getting, again, kind of with the marketing concept for some of these programs and instructing people on how to best apply to tap into some of those resources. Because a lot of enhancements tend to be expensive, and especially if you're utilizing materials that are historic materials. So trying to leverage that the best that we can. And on the next page, you'll see we have a number of historic districts within the municipality. We have 3 main districts and 43 properties that are on the register of historic places. So just kind of puts into perspective the amount and the areas that would be impacted by this and the areas that could tap into these sources. Section 5 calls out what they've deemed as the Monroe Housing Forum. And essentially it's bringing together a group that would meet quarterly of stakeholders that are interested in residential development, housing, all of the above. And they recommend a number of stakeholders in the plan. As an example, contractors, realtors, people that would be pointing people in the direction of certain assistance, all of the above. So that's a plan that they have targeted for 2025. Section 6 talks about redevelopment. And the plan, as you know, identified a number of potential redevelopment sites for new housing development, both on the kind of new development side, but then also on some of our infill lots or redevelopment side of pieces of land. So there were a number of those that were called out, and it's it shows kind of the importance and the potential units that would be available. You look at about 2,200 potential units amongst the sites that they have outlined, and that's just the sites that they have outlined. Doesn't account for some of the other infill lots that we see. Section 7 talks about neighborhood enterprise zones. So it's called out as its own specific goal. So there was a lot of sentiment very similar to what we heard this evening in terms of marketing this program, tapping into specific funds. As I believe the mayor mentioned, we do have 2 already activated neighborhood enterprise zones. They're also suggesting activating a 3rd north of the river, as the 2 existing ones exist south of the river. And on this map, it's very difficult to see, but it shows all of the kind of proposed boundaries for incentive programs. And I believe it's in like a magenta color. You'll see the box that's circling Noble to the north. East of Monroe Street is another area that they've identified to tap into for setting up another neighborhood enterprise zone. So I think that's definitely, based on the sentiment here, something that is important. And then last but not least is Section 8, the rental property inspection program. And specifically, they call out, setting up specific criteria within the rental housing program. They talked about determining if a graduated license period or anything like that would be necessary. Obviously, there's a number of different parts and pieces to that we we deal in here internally in terms of that process. But whether it's evaluating that process to see if there's anything that would or could be altered, or if it's talking about allocating more resources specifically to this, just seeing as some of those the rental housing numbers stack up throughout the city. And I put on here a side note, point of sale inspections. So we do have an ordinance that calls out point of sale inspections, but it's something that has to be revisited by council. Twice before, there has been a notion of kind of limiting the enforcement on that side. And so I guess the question within this whole realm is, does it make sense to keep that in place, or does it make sense to remove it as something? And that would be when someone's selling a property, selling a home, doing an inspection ahead of that. So those were the 8 steps, and kind of tried to briefly go through those as best I could. And so I just wanted to touch briefly on the steps that have been taken so far. Within the 5-year action plan, neighborhood improvement, in terms of the neighborhood improvement program, not live, but we do have our neighborhood enhancement program that just went live today. So that was the $56,000 grant program specifically targeted to the Orchard East neighborhood. So we're just starting to kind of get some information out about that program. We set up the application and are working on some really good partnerships and volunteer activities. And Councilman Hayter, appreciate the time spent chatting with us a little bit through that. But that's just another opportunity, and we'll continue to go after additional grant funds to help offset the cost of improvements for the community. Zoning wise, we did receive the housing readiness grant, as I mentioned, $50,000 to put toward the implementing changes to the zoning code. Looking to kick off that in August and really kind of come before this group again and get where specifically that zoning piece, what the priorities are and what areas are in agreement and not in agreement, and bringing that before Planning Commission and City Council. Monroe Housing Forum. So we've begun conversations with partners, outlined about specific aspects to the Monroe Housing Strategy. Specifically the owners of the Mako site, which was included as a redevelopment site, and then also Monroe Public Schools, as they have a number of different sites that were identified in the plan. We have started some conversations with both the superintendent and the board, just seeing where the appetite is and whether they find consensus in the plan items, or if they, what their timeline is on some of those projects, just to get a feel. And then also finally redevelopment. So projects that have kicked off thus far, the St. Mary Academy project, which was mentioned specifically in the plan, Mason Run, the second iteration of that. And then also our friends, Community Reimagine, LC. So talking about, some of the infill lots and developing strategies for that. So that cottage court development that we're hopeful the funding comes through here shortly for. And then also conversations started on a number of the different redevelopment sites. Yes.
I believe we have an item on tonight's agenda regarding the PUD
Yes.
rezoning.
Yes. Yeah. You'll hear from me a little bit later on that one, but yes, another site that, it wasn't specifically identified, but turns out that that there's development and there's the appetite for development all over. So, having talked about the 8, I would like some feedback from everyone on council in terms of finding some consensus on the prioritization of these 8. If there are certain ones that you think we should launch into right away versus ones that it's a good thing to have and it involves housing, but it's not something that we think right away we should dive into and allocate resources toward. So I think just kind of going through these and getting everyone's thoughts and some rankings.
Any initial thoughts from anybody? Andrew?
I've spent a lot of my career dealing with people about people-related problems. And one of the things that I've become accustomed to or have learned or adopted is that a lot of these problems are kind of like a Jenga set, and some of the blocks, when you push on them, move really well.
Yep.
And some of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
Where are the obstacles within the items that have been presented to us? Where do we expect to find resistance?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think it looking through the list, I think there could be, depending on under Neighborhood Improvement Act specifically, identifying that it's really the community. It's a public hearing that is required to set that process in place. And then it's a board of both citizens and representatives that would be making the decisions of where those funds are spent. So I think anytime you implement something like that with a tax increment financing, you're going to see both positive and negative feedback off of that. Financing, I think that's a continuing process. I think that's trying to set up some of those relationships with the lending institutions and trying to pinpoint exactly what we want a program to look like would be a challenge in that one. Zoning, anytime you update the zoning code, it's all the reference numbers and going back, and we're very fortunate that we've received some funding to help out with that, because that could be a really burdensome process, altering the zoning code and altering all of the uses of it everywhere. I think some of the other ones, the housing forum, neighborhood enterprise zone, since we have items in place already, I think those are some definitely low hanging fruit that would be easy enough to launch into. Rental property inspection, I think the time frame and the allocation of staff resources, knowing that we have 2 code enforcement inspectors and 2 building inspectors that are working full time, and then also a rental clerk position. Knowing the capacity within the department for that, I think would definitely have to be expanded in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, that's kind of a long-winded question, but I definitely think about this a lot.
Andrew? The zoning, seeing as how it's a framework or a rule structure for the entire process of how we're going to allow this development to take place, probably is what I see as the thing that's the most important on there. However, with that said, it strikes me that some of the other especially the forum and the Historic District Commission, potentially are stakeholders to the conversation that happens
Right.
regarding the discussion on zoning. And I think that you need to probably front load those as much as possible. I think that you correctly identified that there's a couple of these programs that are pretty much ready to go right now or have already been established, like the NEZ, like the rental property inspection program. Perhaps we need to discuss changes being made to that, but, you know, us here on council have seen where processes like that can get bogged down as well. So I think that it has the potential for shining a light on some of the issues of our community, but it also probably is one of the areas where I expect the most pushback. Things like financing, I don't expect any pushback. I mean, I don't know how much we're going to have to twist the arms of the crediting institutions to take our money, or the applicants to take advantage of the program. But we are expending dollars on the benefit for the benefit of a very few individuals. Now, if they're living in the community and now they're going to invest in the community for the next 20 or 30 years, maybe that's an investment that needs to be made. But I'm not expecting any obstacles to this, to stuff like that. So I think that the zoning on here pretty much stands out as a clear priority. There are perhaps components of this that touch that in terms of stakeholder input, though. Those would be my thoughts.
Thanks. Other comments or thoughts on these items? Okay, Michelle?
I agree with Andrew. The zoning is pretty much the umbrella that everything is going to be falling under, so that would be where I would start.
Others? Kelly?
Yes, Your Honor. I wrote zoning as well as I think should be the top priority because, like I said, everything else will come underneath that. I think the neighborhood enterprise zone, the rental property inspection, that's been in place in some shape, form, or fashion for some time. I think those two, I don't have I will put the neighborhood enterprise zone second, just because the homeowners that are already investing in their homes in those zones are not being able to take advantage of it just because there's no process. And we've been talking about the fact that there's no process for a couple years now. So I think we need to get the processes going so that they can take advantage of that. I do worry about the home ownership versus renter. And I read that line in there where it said it could be irreversible. I know communities have reversed it and flipped it in favor of home ownership, even low income communities. So I don't know that that's necessarily on here. I guess that could go under neighborhood improvement or redevelopment, but I think that's something we really need to take a look at. What are the steps other communities have taken to reverse that? There's a lot of development going on in the area, and there's ways that we can make pathways to home ownership for all levels of income. Financing, it might be a little more difficult than some are thinking, just because my personal experience with the first-time home buyers. It sounds really great. You're going to go through all this housing education, and you're going to get this grant through MISTA. They don't make it easy at all, especially MISTA. They do not make it easy, and it's almost like two separate underwriting processes, and you don't learn this in those home education classes. I did reach out to MCOP to let their housing agent know that, you know, maybe letting the participants understand it's not as easy as you're going to take this class and somebody's just going to give you this certificate, at least in my experience and a couple other experiences that I've heard of. So financing, that's going to take some work, you know. I guess redevelopment will come along as we set these other things in place. But yeah, I would say zoning is at the top. I was interested in that accessory dwelling zoning because a lot of people, they have space and that would add to the tax base and help out families as well.
Yeah.
So that's not on here, but I'm sure it will fall under zoning. The forum, I guess that would be easy enough. I think it's good when you say you're going to include realtors and contractors, and hopefully it'll be a good cross section of people that could be on that forum. The rental inspection program, where do you feel that we're at with that? I know we put a lot of time into beefing that up, but I mean, I still see a lot of slumlords. I mean, I can name them, but I won't publicly, but I'll come and talk to you privately. Do you see that as having improved, or where do you see that program at right now?
Absolutely. I think it's definitely improved. You know, and I've been here for about a year and 3 months at this point, but just seeing that process and how it's evolved, and knowing that we've come a long way, I think, in making that process, you know, as firm as we possibly can within the city. We do have, you know, ones that come up all the time as recurring issues. We talk about those during our every 2 weeks. We have our blight enforcement team that meets, and we talk about the rental inspection items as well. We bring a lot to council for code enforcement, and you see those come through on your agendas. And by that point, they've already received numerous citations, and our inspectors have been out there on numerous occasions. So I do think it's come a long way.
You brought up the point of sale inspections. Did you say you wanted us to contemplate if we want to enforce that more or less?
Yeah, I think that'll be a future conversation for council, but just you know, mentioning that we do have an ordinance that kind of outlines the procedure, but on a couple different occasions, enforcement, when it was considered, it was kind of the decision to not enforce that, and not, you know, put that on as a you know, a step in the process.
Can you briefly explain that process to me again?
Yeah, I think
Because I thought it was to stop slumlords or slum owners from selling their properties in such a state of disrepair that the new owner would have a hard time bringing it up to code.
And I think that's really the main gist of it. But within that, you know, it's an extra step in that process too. If someone's just a standard owner and they're looking to sell their house, there's, you know, a separate fee for that and separate process. So
How do we activate that point of sale inspection?
yeah, I think it would just
As a
take.
city, or is the owner or the seller who activates the process?
Yeah, we would have to, I think, come up with an internal process in terms of how we would address that, who we would send out to do that inspection, what that process would look like. Since it's kind of fallen off, there's not a process set in place for that, but that would be something that we'd have to really consider and outline what makes the most sense.
Thank you.
So, Brian, go ahead, and I'll have some
Yeah,
comments.
Just commenting on Andrew Kelly and Mickey's comments here. Zoning is very important. I won't disagree with that. But I think when you talk about financing, sometimes the NEZ zones can help. But as you said, they really haven't been implemented. They haven't been out there. They're not really communicated to the residents very well. But that could be a way to redevelop the financing question, or at least get an answer to it. So, but as far as going from rental to home ownership, those types of things, taking homes from one aspect to the other, that's mostly within the zoning. And I agree, it's very difficult once you get into that rental zone. It's very difficult to get out of it. So if you know of ways that other cities have done that, I think that'd be a good search for us to find out how that happens.
So as I look at these, and I think it's difficult just to go from 1 through 8, because I think they're interconnected. I mean, zoning, of course, sets the foundation of what we do, but I think take that into consideration when you're talking about housing forum and information from those, whether they're supportive or not, and then how do you move forward? You know, and then just historic districts. This was been brought years ago. And it was community driven by those that lived in a historic district to get all the houses within one district instead of being individual, and just couldn't get the signatures necessary to move forward and then have that change. Not saying it's not possible. I'm thinking, so you think it'd be maybe simple, but then others are a little more reserved of doing that. So I think there's interconnectivity with that, with the zoning neighborhood enterprise zone. You know, the redevelopment, I think we've talked about that. It's not just new development, it's infill, it's redevelopment in a fashion that's going to meet all the needs and attainability within what we're looking for. The neighborhood improvement, and I guess I'll go with that and tie it to the rental property inspection. So and I think that having it in the criteria there of having different, I'll say, opportunities based, we've talked about that, how we do it every 3 years, but maybe some we need to visit every year. It's not about enforcement, it's about compliance. If we can get compliance and make those improvements, then we don't have to get to enforcement. And I think the more we can do up front, the less we have to worry about later. The point of sale, that's been for a while, that we've actually approved it, but then we didn't implement. And so Kelly, your questions are very good. So I don't think at the time we had the staff that we were going to be able to do all point of sale inspections, but we had an entity who was a contractor that did that work and wanted to get in a contractual relationship. And then you have to set what that cost is and minimal. And then you have the Realtors Association that, they feel to be not needed. But then on the other hand, if we have houses get sold and they're not meeting inspection, then it just comes to City Hall when they have to do some work and don't realize that they need permits and they need all these things done. And had they known that, would they have bought the residence? I think there's all those things that work together. And then there was also discussion inside the city doing a contractor, but kind of take the voluntary approach. They themselves could have an entity do it if they're on an approved list, kind of like we do with others. We have a responsible bidder ordinance now. And the idea is we have a list of those that can be done. Pick anyone you want if you have somebody. And if they're not on a list, they have to just come in and know that what we're asking for to follow the same structures, because you can have a point of sale inspection, but if you're not matching and checking the same things, then it's not going to work. So it's not lost to me, and I'll have to say it, that we had this, and it was about a month ago or so, I received a call from one of our neighboring communities, and it was an email about point of inspection, wanted to know how it was working, and they took ours and implemented it in their city already. So I found it interesting. We have it, but we haven't implemented, but they move forward. And I'll just say who it is. It was City of Adrian. Very like community, same items, same struggles, same housing items. They've implemented. So I say that because I'd like to know. I'm actually going to get back with them, see how it started. Yeah. Sure, they got pushback, but just work through those for the betterment of the community and how we make sure we improve our housing stock. The ADUs, I like the fact that there's a table in here, the table 12, which is additional housing related resources. There's a lot of information there, and I think there's things that will tell you about the notes, but things that are flags that, like, okay, you're probably not going to get a home investment partnership because there's only one and it's 3 counties. And they said, unless you join with them, I doubt they're going to share that. And maybe we can work our way to getting one from a Monroe County region. So, but the ADUs, I mean, they gave examples of 4 or 5 communities. So I think that's worthy to see how they implemented. And because it is one caution they had, not caution, but a comment they had, it's a supplemental strategy to increase density, but it's not to solve your affordability or density concerns. So it's complementary versus foundational. And that goes back to that zoning and put it in the zoning as well. The other part I found interesting here, it goes to that, conversations on rental properties, and they call it the tipping point. That we have a particular area that will exceed 55% of an area, a tract of rental properties, and how that can be very difficult to bring back, because you really want neighborhoods, and we all lived in rental properties, and we need to have rental properties because not everybody is going to want to or can obtain a home to purchase. But how do we manage that to make it flow within the community? So I think that's my point when I look at these. I see the neighborhood improvement, the rental inspection, NEZ. How do we cluster these that might be 2 or 3 things together? But if you're doing one, there is that interaction with the other.
Yep.
I think zoning is going to probably be up there as well as the housing forum, because we're talking about it here. Those may watch this later on YouTube and wonder what we're talking about. But I think some of that's important to make sure. The other stuff we have in place, what we've said, is how we implement them and how we find the way to do that that's fiscally responsible as well. So those are my comments. Andrew, follow up?
Question regarding finance and the sourcing of those funds. I think it mentioned it was from CDBG.
Mhm.
Broadly, or is that coming specifically from MISTA?
In regards to the funding overall, or
First-time
the
home buyer down payment assistance.
CDBG?
Yeah.
Yep, that's CDBG. 10,000 each year that's allocated to the city of Monroe for that.
Gotcha. So is that separate of the MISTA?
Yep, so it's
Or
separate.
is that part of that?
Yep. So the MISTA is kind of coming out with their own programs that are separate from the CDBG allocation. A lot of them utilize some of the same income requirements that we see in order to qualify for some of those programs. But each one is a little bit different in the way that it's layered out. So I think now we have a fairly good grasp in terms of what to expect coming out here in the near future. I think it's clear from MISTA that they're not going to slow down on their programs. So to Councilwoman Vining's point, making it where it's simple enough and we can, guide applicants through that process in an effective way is also a part of this charge.
The other point I would make, and this might fit more appropriately as part of a broader land use policy, is something in here regarding cost benefit analysis or an assessment of the procedures that we are undertaking and how they are paying off for the neighborhoods that we're developing.
Yeah.
As an example, there have been some interactive maps been put out by several firms.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that I had the firm at the top of mind. I know their stuff's online and you can see it there. But when we install infrastructure or utility lines into our neighborhoods, we know how much it costs per mile to install those. We have an expectancy of the lifespan that those roads have, 30 years, maybe 40, 45 if it's concrete. But we know how much it costs. We know what we expect the lifespan of that infrastructure to be, and we can amortize that over that period and compare it to the taxable value that's coming off of those neighborhoods, and determine within the city which of the neighborhoods and how they've been zoned and how they've been developed and the amount of services that we've dedicated for them and how we've organized them are very efficient and which perhaps are less efficient, so that we can build in a sustainable manner going forward.
Yep.
with the future infrastructure costs in mind. And of course, every single person that we are bringing into our community is going to be contributing in both financial and non-financial ways, making us stronger. But at the end of the day, you know, infrastructure and what we do here it's a big part of providing services to the residents. It's a big part of what the residents' taxes go towards, and I want to make sure that we are doing that in a sustainable and efficient way. So seeing something regarding a cost-benefit analysis in terms of our land use policies going forward, I think would be a good thing. I've suggested in the past of when it comes time to redevelop buildings, that we assess what the acquisition cost is, what the current property tax is, what the expected property value is going to be at the end of the project, how long that's going to take, and what the investment cost is going to be. And then you after you do that calculation, you get an estimated time to pay off in years. And if that is 10 years, man, that's a good project. If that's 100 years, maybe it's not. But some sort of data and mechanism by which we can assess how efficient the actions that have been that we've done so far, so that we can make better decisions going forward.
If there's no other comments for right now, I know there's a lot still. Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
Thank you. And thank you, Matt, for the presentation. Just one question. You had mentioned the neighborhood improvement and the grant and the application process. Because of the timeline that we're going to be working with, could you give us a quick rundown of how that's going to work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so what Councilman Hayter is referring to is the Neighborhood Enhancement Program. It's the grant funds that we were awarded through MISTA. There are multiple different channels to that fund. We went after funds for exterior improvements within the Orchard East neighborhood. So it can be deployed in specific areas and the specific areas outlined as the Orchard East neighborhood, specific to exterior improvements primarily to the homes. But our goal is to award 6 grants, a minimum of 6 grants. And the maximum grant amount of each is able to be $9,999. And the purpose behind that is if we went over that, we'd be required to put a lien on the properties that we are providing funding assistance for, which we do with the Fix program. It adds another layer of complexity in terms of the day-to-day administration, that sort of thing. And it also puts the burden on the home owner at the end of the day as well. To remember if they do go to sell, if they sell within a certain period of time, that's on there. So the program is going to run from now until October. So that's the time frame to get applications in. Projects have to be completed by December in order to utilize the funds. We do, anticipate that there will be an extension opportunity with this program. But at the same time, we'd like to kind of stick by that timeline. For the first month of the program, if we get a rush of applications right away, after a certain point, if the applicant meets all of the boxes and it kind of fits that review, it's going to go into what is a lottery system for need. And then it'll, after that certain period of time has passed, then it'll be first come, first serve at that point. So,
Very good.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I know that we have yet another item on the work session. Want to make sure that we have a complete review of that topic as well. If you have other thoughts or comments, please forward them along to Matt. And I'm sure we'll be coming back with a follow-up at some point.
Yep. August
you know,
19th is the
there it
plan.
is. There it is.
So,
all right.
yep. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Manager Robinson, our second item.
And presentation of the schematic design for the Navarro Library and ALCC campus.
Thank you.
Mark, did you want to say something first?
Oh, Mark.
Director Cochran will will discuss the issue, and then we have the architecture people who will be presenting.
Thank you.
Because you want to hear from them, you don't want to hear from me. So as you know, over the past several years, the city's been working on a plan for the improvements and expansion of the Opportunity Center, ALCC that houses the Opportunity Center in our library. City Council appointed a committee that has been working with the staff and Kohler Architect to guide this project forward. And so tonight, Kohler is going to present what the site plan looks like so far. We're at about 80% design, intending to put the project out to bid around September. And so tonight, you're going to see a culmination of all of that work, a lot of engagement with Nancy Belair, who's in the audience tonight, Stephanie Kasperzak, the Learning Bank, in terms of how the facility has been designed and is envisioned to be constructed. So I'll turn it over to Woody to share the presentation so far. Just gotta plug in the HDMI. Yeah. Right here. Right here.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, City Council, Mayor Clark. Woody Hoffer here with Kohler Architecture. Also have Keith Kohler here with Kohler Architecture as well. As Mark said, to present the project that we've been working on at the Opportunity Center and of our library. So to take us back to kind of the beginning of this project, I think most of you have been on council since the spring of 2021 when this project really kicked off. We were tasked with looking at the entire campus that the existing Opportunity Center and of our library sit on. And when we mention campus, we're really talking about the property that also includes Labor Park, the Selma Rankins Gardens, the Sharing Gardens, and then later on has grown into where the Learning Bank is currently located. During that time, we were able to conduct some engagement with members and organizations of the community, doing some surveying, understanding with not only the entities that exist there currently, but also some of the organizations and members of the community with interest in the project in the neighborhood. And so at that point, that's when the Monroe County Learning Bank was included into the project as well. And so moving forward from that point, we looked at doing a project that included the Navarre Library, the Opportunity Center at ALCC with MCOP, and then also the Monroe County Learning Bank. And so as the project started, Keith and myself and our team at Kohler Architecture, we looked at this project as this community-based project that we wanted to make sure that we integrated what this community is about today and what it's been about in the past as well. And so we looked at a couple of different things as we started to develop the concept. One of them being this community as what we call it today as the Orchard, and prior to that, and then also as the kind of manufacturing history of this neighborhood as well, with the steel industry, the rail industry, the port, and how we don't want to forget, these different aspects of the community and how we can integrate this into the design of the space. And so conceptually, what we looked at with the building was taking this kind of idea of the orchard and trees and the growth of the tree, and we looked at the exterior of this building similarly to that of the outer bark of a tree. The outer bark of a tree is this protection from the outside world, and it's continually renewed from within. And so the interior of the tree is really going to be about the interior of this building and the importance of what this new building is about. And with a tree, that's called the heartwood. And the heartwood is the central supporting pillar of the tree. It will not decay or lose strength while the outer layers are intact. And so this is really the importance of this building, the part that retains the DNA, the knowledge, and the culture of not only what's inside the building, but also of the community. So this just represents an example based on those ideas and those concepts of our exterior material palette. As you can see here, inspired by kind of that same concept. You see some of the cargo from the rail, wildflowers, and nature, and then the interior material concept as well, reflecting on that. You'll see some of the industrial aspects, as well as the natural materials, the durability. And then one of the aspects that goes back to this idea of nature and connection to the orchard that we didn't want to miss is that I think for all of us that have spent time on this campus and in this community, this existing building is really a beacon to this community, and we didn't want to lose that. We wanted to make sure that we integrated that throughout the design of the space. So no matter what time of the day, whether it's morning when the sun's rising or in the afternoon when the sun is setting and into the evening, we wanted to ensure that this building still provided those same things that it always has, and be this ever-present kind of visible beam of hope and inspiration, not only for the Orchard East community, but also for the city as a whole. So to give you an idea, the exterior rendering of the proposed building here, and this is looking from the existing parking lot on the site back towards the building. So the main entrance to this building will be in a similar location to where the main entrance of the existing Navarre Library is located, with the Opportunity Center beyond. And although we were not tasked with designing this building to be, a LEED certified or a building, there are many aspects of this building that we were very intentional about to make sure that we were providing a new facility that was responsible not only for the city but also for the community. So here's just a list of 10 of those aspects that we've been able to integrate into the building. Number one being native plantings and wildflowers are integrated throughout the site design, committing to a biodiverse landscaping approach. We have covered bicycle parking that's provided at the new north entry. High performance glazing facade systems support energy efficiency and occupant comfort. The building offers expansive views of the campus and beyond, provides places of respite, offering relaxing outdoor spaces for patrons. Lake area transit routes provide public access to the campus. Energy efficient LED lighting, occupancy, and daylight sensor controls are provided throughout the building. Furnishings are made from healthy and sustainable materials with low VOC products and recycled content. Key products installed on the inside of the building include ceiling tiles, carpeting, paints, and finishes are made of low emitting materials, improving air quality. And all restrooms and plumbing fixtures are water efficient. And so to walk you through the floor plans a little bit to give you an idea of what we're proposing. At the first floor, level one, the center of this floor is the circulation space for the library. To the west of the building, so the west of the building would be that side facing Labor Park, is the dedicated youth library space. To the east side of the first floor is the dedicated community living room and kind of adult library space. Kind of back towards the center of the building again, we have a Create Lab and the media studios. So we'll have audio, video, and podcast recording studios. We have some conference and meeting spaces again on the first floor. And then restrooms. We have both dedicated men's and women's restrooms. We do have also a handicap accessible individual toilet on the first floor near the youth library. And then we also have provided an exterior toilet to serve Labor Park. So I think Kelly and her staff will be very happy to know that hopefully young people won't be running through the new building with wet bathing suits and everything else. They have the ability to use that from the exterior. A couple things to note on this floor, we do have the ability to have direct access from this building out to Labor Park to the west. We also have access to the existing main entry of the Opportunity Center. And then we will also have access internally to the existing Opportunity Center at the rear stair. Looking at level 1.5, so we're calling it level 1.5. This is if you're familiar with the existing building, this is the level that the gymnasium is on. So we'll be converting one of the spaces into a conference meeting space. And then we will also have a connection point at this level from the gymnasium level into the stairwell that can take you into the new building for access as well. And then up to level 2. So on level 2, we have the dedicated learning bank space. So they'll have a few classrooms, a couple dedicated offices, as well as their own computer lab and testing center. And then we have some community incubation spaces. So these are large program spaces that not only will the library, the Opportunity Center, but also the learning bank will have available to them. And then also, obviously, the community will as well. We have some private study spaces, a dedicated library staff work area and office, a lounge space for free address usage, and then we will have a second floor reading terrace that will look out over Labor Park. And then we do have another toilet here on the second floor as well, a handicap accessible single occupant toilet. And that's what we have. Thank you.
Any thoughts, comments, Brian?
Yeah, Woody, can you go back to the schematic there?
Yeah.
Just for level 1, it's showing it was a community porch.
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. And the overhang is going to be the inside rooms on level 2, correct?
Correct. Yep. So that covered porch is the overhang from level 2. The idea is to be able to give some respite if you're parking in the parking lot and you're walking to the main entry of the Opportunity Center. If it's raining, to at least get a break from the weather. That also provides a covered space where we will have some permanent seating built into the plaza as well, to be able to activate that space through programming. And then around the corner is where we'll have our covered bike parking as well, near that mechanical space.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Microphone, Kelly.
Well, as I'm sure my supervisors have been reporting to you some of my issues.
Yep.
So I'd like a chance to personally present some of those. And I don't know, they say we're like 80% into this. So I don't know, what we can do about it. The circulation space, in terms of my understanding of 20 years of experience of library experience, those chairs around that circulation counter, is that the proposed new public that concerns me because I think it messes with privacy, patron privacy and staff privacy, confidentiality, and line of sight for me as a staff to be able to see and monitor what's happening on the computers. Of course, it's a public building, so we don't vet who comes in and out,
Right.
but there's always an opportunity for people to misuse public computers. And with the computer facing away from the staff, that does give cause an issue there. I don't know if y'all would want to reconsider that. Also, in there, would that be storage?
Within the circulation space?
within the
Yeah,
circulation space?
there's under counter built-in storage throughout that space.
Yes, so that really causes concern for me with the computers facing away. That's those are big issues in library operations and functions, and I'm sure Nancy has privacy, confidentiality, and line of sight. I think that design takes away all three of those things. My other question or issue was with us being on floor 2 with the library staff space. Since we don't have any other library functions on the second floor, it would have been nice to have all of the library functions on the first floor, just because that keeps workflow and makes it easier and more efficient.
Yeah. Well, I
That's
think,
a big break to have to run up and down. And it's my understanding that on the staff, I can hardly see this. I don't know if you can make it larger, but on the staff workroom,
yeah,
that there'll be a small kitchenette with the warmer for our food program,
yeah.
which we serve about 250 individual meals per week, snack time and dinner. That's going to be an up and down process that I think could have been better managed if we would have had all of the library functions on the first floor.
Yeah, I understand. I think one thing to note for everybody that hasn't been part of the process as well, when we did our programmatic work with the library and the Opportunity Center and the Learning Bank, we ended up with about double the amount of square footage requests that we were able to afford to fit within the footprint of the building. So I agree with you. In a perfect world, we would have put everything that's associated with the library on one floor. Unfortunately, we were constrained by the existing parking lot to the south, the labor park to the west, and then Eastchester to the east. And so without moving some other function of the library to the second floor to put the staff space on the first floor, it felt like through our work, although not convenient for staff to have to go to the second floor, the spaces where reference, the youth, and computers were going to be located seemed to take priority on a first floor where your staff would be permanently versus a staff work area. But I certainly understand the concern there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no design architect, but I would have put if I was designing the building, I would have put the Create Lab, the podcasting, video, and all of that up with the Learning Bank. I don't know how much space that would create, but so what do you think about the circulation and the computers?
So we've been working with Nancy on that over the last few weeks, and we'll continue to do so. I know that she corresponded with us today. So as Mark said, we're not 100% done with this yet. And what you're seeing these drawings here, there's already been some revisions since this presentation has been created. So we're going to continue to work through that.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to get my concerns out since, this is the first time that we've seen this as an entire council. So that was my main thing. And I know you've been working with Amber and Nancy because I talked about the fitting the food warmer,
Yep.
and I see you went back and included that. In that staff space, is there any storage or closet
Yeah, so
space
there'll be storage throughout the two walls, and then there's other space within there for things to be stored as well. And there's also the private office within that space as well. And that space will be accessed by card reader only. So your staff will be the only people who have access to that space.
Okay, 'cause I was just concerned about it. I didn't see any place for like coats in the winter or for us to put our purses and bags and things like that away. But there would be space in that area.
Yeah, so we're working through with Nancy the specifics on storage and the like in that space.
Okay. I think that was all I had. Did I see something about a small cafe somewhere?
Oh, so cafe.
You
So that
didn't
area on the
mention
first
that.
floor is basically meant for multi-use, but because we know that you're serving food to young people daily, the idea was that you wouldn't be serving that from the second floor. You would have the space on the first floor that has under-counter refrigeration available, sink, as well as storage there as well for utensils and anything else. Or in the mornings when senior programming may be taking place, a place for coffee, drinks,
Okay.
the likes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I was just a little disappointed I didn't see a staff designated bathroom. So I don't,
Understand?
yeah. So any space for revision in that area?
Unfortunately, unless we're going to lose something else, then we've pretty much maximized the square footage of the building that we can create at this point. So unless we can lose something else,
I mean, that community library living room looks pretty large there. Think we can cut that back a little bit and
yeah, we'll continue to have that discussion with Nancy and see if we can fit something. But I don't want to promise you that we can fit another restroom.
well, yeah, I'm not asking for promises. I'm just getting in where I fit in because,
Yeah.
again, this is the first time we've seen this far as a complete council. And frontline library staff who's there working in the building every day. Thanks for coming. So yeah, I just wanted to get those thoughts out there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we, other comments? This is our first view of this. I think there'll be more opportunities for conversation. Obviously, it's 80% not complete. And I guess as it gets closer, we'll know that. I have what you said, or I heard, was September's when we're looking to go out to bid. So there's still some time and opportunity to make thoughts, revisions, further comments. At the same time, return for kind of a final review.
Question. I don't know if this is an architecture question or an architect question or a library question. During the demolition and rebuild process, has there been any conversation amongst the committee about where library services in the area would take place?
Yeah, I think that's probably a library conversation. We have had some conversations about that, but I believe Nancy is probably making arrangements for that.
Okay. Thank you.
There's no other comments. Woody, any final comments from yourself, thoughts or questions you may have for us before we move on?
As Mark mentioned, the plan is to go out to bid in September. We are working with AUK, who is the same construction manager that the city worked with for the fire station. So we'll turn everything over to them at the end of August. We'll go out to bid. The plan is to go out to bid in September, and then if everything goes well, the plan, and Mark, feel free to interrupt me if I'm talking out of turn here, but the plan would be then after the November election to start construction. We don't want to interrupt with the Navarre Library being a polling station. We don't want to interrupt with that process. So we'll wait till that process is over with and then begin construction.
Very well. Thanks, Woody.
Yeah, thank you guys.
City Manager Robinson, anything further before we close the session? We have about 11 minutes before the council meeting begins.
Other items for the work session.
Any items from the council regarding the upcoming meeting, thoughts? I know that we've received some communication on an item that you're going to make requests during the council meeting, correct? Okay. There's nothing further. Close the work session, and 10 minutes, we'll be back.
Pound my fist, maybe that'd help. Huh?
Yep, whenever you're ready.
And call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter,
Here?
Councilperson Steelgrave,
Here?
Councilperson Vining,
She's present.
Councilperson Germaine, Councilperson Lamore,
Present.
Felder, Mayor Clark.
Present. I'd ask we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Grant us the strength to manage the challenges ahead and the wisdom to identify opportunities as we strive to serve our community.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item, please.
On the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda.
Thank you. City Manager Robinson, any items on the agenda or any adjustments?
Yes, Your Honor and Council, I am asking that item number 4773, which was on the consent agenda, authorization for code enforcement legal action. I'm happy to announce that the items that were coming before you for legal action today have been corrected, so we can remove that from the agenda.
Nice.
The second item I'm asking to be adjusted is I'm asking to add a closed session at the end of the regular action agenda tonight to deal with attorney-client communication as well as a litigation update.
Citizens comment. After citizens comment.
Okay, so the request, obviously, of the administration is that we remove item 4773 from the consent agenda and also add the closed session for items stated. So, Clerk, anything further?
I would defer to the city attorney, but I assume that we'll pull the consent agenda item when we get to the consent agenda? Could we just pull it there to, like, consent agenda and pull it from the consent agenda? Or do you want to
I
adjust
think
the whole agenda now?
We could do that. The only thing is then that will add that as an action item, and then we would have to say, okay, it's resolved. So I would be comfortable if there's a move on a motion to both remove that item from the agenda entirely, including the consent agenda, and then to add that item. I think we could do that as one motion if someone is comfortable to make that motion.
The removal is because there's no action needed. Is that correct?
I'm comfortable either way. I think either way works.
Councilman Moore.
To amend the agenda to remove item 4773 from the consent agenda, as well as to include a closed session after the final citizen comments to discuss attorney-client privilege correspondence and litigation with Nathan Carr.
Motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Stillgrave, to approve the regular agenda with the amendments stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter? Yes. Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Germaine? Yes. Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
Is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments, the amount should read $1,820,709.37, 1,820,709.37.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda council wishes to have pulled? Councilman Felder. Other items from council? Any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda from those present? Seeing none, motion on the consent agenda. Councilman Felder.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion that all items on the consent agenda not pulled for further discussion be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Second.
By Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda not pulled for further discussion be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Hager. Steelgrave.
Yes. Yes.
Jermaine. Lamore.
Yes.
Felder. Mayor Clark.
Yes. Please.
The next item is under presentations, communications, and public hearings. Item 4770, case number PUD 24-001-1331, La Pleasant Street, PUD public hearing.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing. It's a public hearing regarding the Plan Unit Development 24-001 of 1331 La Pleasance Road, PUD public hearing. Any comments from those present here this evening for this public hearing? Any comments? Very well. No comments. Close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under council action, and it is item 4772, case number PUD 24-001-1331, La Pleasant Street, PUD rezoning preliminary plan review.
Manager Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor and Council. This is for the PUD 24001 for 1331 La Pleasance Road, the rezoning preliminary plan review, and Assistant or Deputy Director of the Economic and Community Development will address this issue for council.
Absolutely. Good evening, Honorable Mayor.
Good evening, Matt.
Let's see. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, Matt Vanasecker, Deputy Director of Economic and Community Development and Neighborhood Services Coordinator for the city. This plan came before the Planning Commission at their meeting on July 8th. The plan, it's an existing PUD that the owner and developer are requesting to be rezoned under a new plan. Previous plan was a 24-unit senior multifamily housing development on this site. The owner is now proposing to do 14 single-family homes on the lot instead. So this plan went before the Planning Commission, as I said, on Monday, July 8th. They affirmed the staff recommendation of a conditional approval with the conditions outlined that you see in the motion this evening. One of the primary things that we had a discussion with the developer about was obviously there's a number of different permits and things that they'll have to obtain in order for this development to happen. This is simply the preliminary plan and request to move forward with their plans and ultimately they'll have to come back with a final site plan to be approved by the members of council with a recommendation from the Planning Commission. The key thing to consider with this is that they also presented some elevations that appeared to be contrary to the master plan for how a housing type would work for this location. The garages were proud of the front porch area. So as you can see in the recommendation, we are recommending that they correct that as part of this condition, as well as answering some questions from water and wastewater in terms of sanitary sewer and the ordinance. We did have some conversations with the developer since the Planning Commission meeting. They were in attendance at the Planning Commission meeting, and they are comfortable presenting a new elevation to hopefully address some of those comments and concerns. But the general idea in terms of the lots is that there would be 14 single-family homes.
Questions from council for Mr. Vanasecker? Councilman Jermaine?
Triangular lots, those are going to be house lots as well?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. The PUD provides some additional flexibility in terms of the width of the lots, the length of the lots, et cetera.
Thank you.
Other comments? Councilwoman Vining?
I was concerned about this development. Does engineering or water think that this will cause further flooding issues with the neighborhood to the north? That neighborhood has been dealing with flooding issues for a couple decades now, and a lot of the residents think it began to happen when they built that new condominium. I'm not saying that's why, because we spent a lot of money having engineers look into that, but it was never mitigated that those neighbors still can't use their backyard. I'm curious, will building on this piece of property affect that, or could it possibly affect that flooding that those neighbors have been dealing with for some time now?
I would defer to Director Lewis for further comment, but what I will say is that this is the preliminary plan. So the final site plan is where a lot of those specific details get fleshed out.
Okay.
So that will be coming back before this group.
And in this early plan, are there sidewalks gonna go along
Yep.
there?
So that's one of the requirements that we have for the developer. They're not outlined in this, just showing kind of how the lots would be laid out as of right now, but that would be included in a final site plan as well.
Yeah, I'd be curious if digging and building over there would cause further runoff into that neighborhood to the north of there.
Yep.
Mr. Robinson, any thoughts or comments or response for the councilwoman? I know that we've talked about this for a while. There's, and I know Mr. Lewis has presented on this multiple times what the primary factors are. I mean, the lake has risen and filled the entire quarry space. And of course, the run that goes through there, but also the way in which the water goes through the, I'll say, the underground is following the rocks anywhere to the lowest point. So that's not going to change at this location. I don't believe it's all going to be on ground level. So I don't have the answer. I just think about what we've talked about. I don't know if,
Well, I think that, as you know, this was the preliminary plan review, and this was to fit the PUD that we had the public hearing on tonight. And as Mr. Vanasacker explained, is as we get those site plans, there'll be elevations, there'll be things, and part of that review, as it is with every site plan, they always examine what the effect of the elevations of each structure is going to be, or each development is going to be on the surrounding area. So that would be part of the work site, the work site review.
so Councilman, if we making this note, if they make sure they take that into account and see if there's building or elevation is going to have an impact, and then it also allows them to bring the previous study that was done and information and maybe some historical information at the next time it comes up, and we'll have some answers. That work? No, you didn't. No, if you don't ask now, then we're asking next time, and next time we'll say it's here. So it's this way they can staff can be prepared and bring some thoughts, and if there's additional comments you may have, of course you can get a hold of Mr. Robinson also.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is being presented for recommending on conditional approval for the items that are stated. Obviously, there's 3 items in here. I'm not going to read them. They're on the fact sheet we've received. So at this point, the administration is looking to move this forward for the PUD rezoning for the development, knowing that there is conditional approval on the preliminary site plan. Any other comment? Oh, Councilwoman Vining?
I was gonna make a motion.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I know where the other one's going to come. Go ahead, No, go ahead, Councilwoman.
So I move to conditionally approve the preliminary site plan with the following conditions. 1, that each proposed home footprint be revised to account for master plan future land use, medium density, urban standards for garages, pedestrians, amenities, and porches. 2, that the applicant address engineering department comments in the staff analysis when developing their final site plan. And 3, that the applicant address sanitary sewer comments from the water wastewater department and the staff analyst when developing their final site plan.
Second that motion.
Motion by Councilwoman Vining, supported by Councilman Hayter on item 4772, the PUD 24-001, 1331 La Pleasance PUD rezoning preliminary plan review. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter. Stalgrave.
Yes.
Vining.
Yes.
Jermaine.
Yes.
Lamore.
Yes.
Felder. Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 4766, approval of CDBG subrecipient agreements.
Manager Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor, and Council, and as Council is aware, as we receive our grant funding from CDBG, and as part of that, when we serve as a fiduciary of the CDBG funds, we have sub-recipients that apply through us for these funding, and obviously there's a lot of different reporting and requirements that happen within a sub-recipient agreement. We have to have these legal agreements, and we have 3 such awardees that the sub-recipient agreements that we're asking that you approve would be, the first would be with Legal Services of South Central Michigan, which provides legal service to low and moderate income persons. Also, an agreement with the Monroe County Opportunity Program, the day-to-day, for them to handle the day-to-day operations of the city's fixed program. And also the Monroe County Opportunity Program, the emergency rental and mortgage assistance for qualified residents, and their handling of that program.
Any questions for administration on this item on the sub-recipient agreements? Before we make a motion, I just want to make a comment on the fact sheet and the write-up. I appreciate the information that's enclosed here, including I'll say the opening regarding, not just the 3 agreements, but also specifically what's are the responsibilities for ourselves, the recipients, because when you go into the contract, it's very lengthy. And this, of course, talks about everybody's responsibility. So I appreciate that right up front on the fact sheet. If there's not any other comments, Councilman Lamore?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Make a motion to approve the proposed sub-recipient agreements with Legal Services of South Central Michigan and Monroe County Opportunity Center, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreements on behalf of the city upon receipt of 2024-25 CDBG agreement from HUD.
Motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine on 4766, approval of the CDBG subrecipient agreements. Clerk, please call the roll.
Hayter. Stalgrave. Vining. Jermaine.
Yes.
Lamore. Felder. Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4765, acceptance of the Mishta, Michigan Neighborhood Grant.
Manager Robinson.
Looking for that sheet. This is the new one we got, right, Mark? You get to say this one now.
Mr. Cochran.
This is the new one. Yep.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, and there's an irregularity with this one. I think I sent out as part of our manager's update that we received word on the 3rd of July that Mishta awarded this $75,000 through the My Neighborhood program to make improvements to Altrusa Park downtown. Once the structure is demolished that's under a demolition order next to it, these funds will match $50,000 that City Council approved in CIP to make certain improvements to that park. However, when we had to send the agreement back, Mishta informed us we weren't supposed to receive the notice yet. That was after it was already on the City Council agenda. So we do hope to hear this week that we actually did get the grant. However, we did leave it on Council's agenda just in case we do get the notification tomorrow when they're supposed to send the notification. If we get the grant, Council has already accepted it, and we'll be able to move forward right away with it. So we're hopeful, but just an ambiguity that came in after the Council agenda was prepared and we sent the notice out.
So, Well, Councilman, I was going to ask, do you, within the recommendation and the, as presented here, anything being pending or final comment from Mishta, is that necessary? I'm looking at the city attorney or not. I think I'm not saying it needs to be done, I'm just asking the question.
Your Honor, I would say the council can't necessarily accept something that hasn't been offered. So I do think it would be appropriate when the motion is made to approve it contingent upon it being formally offered.
Contingent on,
It being formally offered by
okay,
Mishta.
thank you. Councilwoman Vining.
That was my question. What happens if we approve it and then we don't get it? What do we do?
It's a precarious situation. Then you've approved it, but we just won't get it. But
Other questions? If not, Councilman Lamore?
Yeah, I'll make the motion if you'd like. Motion to accept the Mishta, Michigan Neighborhood Grant contingent upon it being formally offered, that the Economic and Community Development Director be authorized to sign the necessary grant agreements, and that the Assistant City Manager, Finance Director be authorized to amend the budget for the grant.
Motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilman Hayter on 4765, acceptance of the Mishta MI Neighborhood Grant as presented. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter?
Yes.
Stillgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is item 4774, consideration to participate in the new opioid settlement agreement.
Thank you. Manager Robinson?
Yes, Your Honor. Recently, the city received notice regarding another opportunity to participate in an opioid settlement agreement. This one happens to involve Kroger. And the deadline for us to submit the documentation in order to participate is August 12th. And I'm asking that City Council will authorize the administration to have the city attorney complete the documents and for us to participate in this opioid settlement agreement.
Any questions for administration? Mr. Robinson, I guess just for maybe those here and maybe those there will be watching or listening even later, the county was the lead on the opioid settlement on the start for the variety of opportunities for settlement funds. We of course joined that, but there's not just one location that's going through litigation on this. There's multiple. Is that where this comes from? Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you are correct.
Because I think this is about the third one that we've received information about and offers to continue with, correct?
That's correct.
So I guess my question is we don't know the exact funding amount. We have ideas, or at least been presented on the previous ones. But administration and with partners, I understand that'll come back to council of how the funds get allocated into what entities. Is that correct?
Well, after we get notice that we'll have receivable, we will be implementing a plan for how we end up spending that money. There are jurisdictions that have utilized that money to reimburse the police and fire for responses to opioid-related incidents, as well as contributions, or we can partner with an entity that helps deal with opioid addiction, rehabilitation, and those kind of ideas.
So I guess I'm glad that you kind of gave the gamut. It's a broad area in which the funds can be allocated. It's a conversation the council will have in the future. Right now, as we're just willing to consideration to participate is what it says. And so we don't lose out on the opportunity of funds of how we then allocate them or prioritize them in our community. I think there are several existing partnerships that we have. I think there's obviously always, from all aspects of opioid, whether it be, like you said, response, but of course the addiction and the impacts on families, children, I could go on. There's so many things in which it could qualify. So I think as we move forward, that we kind of have that criteria And I know it'll be shared when the time comes for us to start talking about that. So I just want to give a foundation for everybody that wonder, well, what do they do with the other money? Well, it hasn't arrived, for one thing, and two, we need to really put a comprehensive plan together how we utilize all of these. So we look forward to that. Any questions, council? If not, a motion would be in order. Councilwoman Germaini?
Thank you. I'll make a motion. Make a motion, move to approve the new opioid settlement agreement related to Kroger and authorize the city attorney to execute the necessary documents on behalf of the city.
Motion by Councilwoman Germaini, supported by Councilman Lamore. Item 4774, consideration to participate in the new opioid settlement agreement. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter? Yes. Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 4775, mission, vision, values.
City Manager Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor, in response to the work session that we had at the last session and to a whole lot of work that was put into by you as a council, your participation in our goals and objectives. And one of the things that came out of our establishing our goals and objectives, which we adopted a couple months ago, was our need to have a mission, vision, and values statement that we go by here as a city. We took the information that you gave. We've had multiple subgroups within the administrative staff, as well as the employees, have all weighed in on this, and we've updated you several times on where we're at, and we've seriously appreciated your input and all of the solid input from our employees and our staff to make our city's mission statement, our city's vision statement, and our core values something that can be something that we're proud of, and what our expectations are for how we treat each other within the organization and how we treat the public that we serve. And basically, upon your adoption, this will go into effect within our administration. The mission statement is provide excellent service through leadership and partnerships to create a vibrant, safe, and healthy community. The vision statement: Monroe will be a thriving city of choice, exemplifying a proud sense of community that embraces change while honoring its heritage. And our core values, which is almost like a moral compass for the way that we as cities, as servants to our community, hold ourselves to these standards, and that will be our expectations of ourselves, your expectations of us. It is the core values of integrity, respect, community, sustainability, innovation, safety, service, and collaboration. We have a little tagline of service with purpose and excellence.
Thank you for the review. I think that, I'll see if there's any thoughts or comments from council. I know we've had the conversation and we've refined it. The last meeting, I think we talked about it extensively as well. So the next steps on this, besides, having it on a piece of paper, administration, I know staff and then council have weighed in of how we kind of present that, not just here in City Hall, but to the community as well, and how it might appear, whether it be in correspondence or just in a visual aspect, our newsletter and things like that. Is there things that I might be missing?
Oh, no, we'll be tapping the shoulder of our communications department, seeking all the ways that we can get these items into our everyday actions, into our everyday correspondences, so that our community is never at a loss to be able to find what our mission is as they're serving government, local government, and they'll understand and they'll see what our vision is, which is inspired by them, and they'll understand our core values, which is how we are to conduct one another amongst everybody, and that will be a reminder, and we will have multiple platitudes of this is what we expect of ourselves as we serve them.
Very good, thank you. We're looking for a motion, so Councilman Hayter.
I make a motion to accept the submitted mission statement, vision statement, and core values for the city of Monroe.
By Councilman Hayter, supported by Councilwoman Stalegrave, my apology, on item 4775, the mission, vision, and values. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter. Stilgrave. Vining. Jermaine.
Yes.
Lamore. Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item.
We have one item, excuse me, that was pulled from the consent agenda, and I do hope I got the number right. Item 4756, West Elm Avenue Storm Pumping Station Replacement of Pumps.
Correct. Council Felder.
Yes, Your Honor. I noticed that this item was a carryover from a prior item. And that as such, in the circumstances surrounding it, it created a situation for immediacy and one in which we had to respond to because of problems that were found with an ongoing project. But whenever there is an alteration from the normal course of business, I think that we owe the public to tell them why and why the decision was made. My understanding of the project was that we engaged this firm for a smaller project back in May for $74,000. Now, at that time, that amount, I believe, is below the threshold that is required for a responsible bidder ordinance to take effect. This new amount, however, I believe is over that threshold. So I'm wondering if that bidder has put in for the responsible bidder ordinance, and would ask administration some of the details surrounding the reasons why we had to shift towards this contractor because of the things that were laid out in Mr. Lewis's
Mr. Robinson, or are you going to defer to
item.
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Lewis?
All right, Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. I'll do my best to answer the question. That is a very good point. It's one that we're kind of stuck in this. Is this a contractor or a supplier primarily? Kennedy Industries is the premier supplier, if not the only supplier in a lot of cases, of large capacity pumps. They are the supplier that supplied us with pumps at the St. Mary's Gardens project. And I believe they also have the pumps at our North Dixie Highway underpass as well. So we did sole source solicit them originally for repairs to the pumps. It was intended to be a replace or a rehabilitation of both pumps. Basically, we have two redundant pumps at the West Elm Avenue underpass under Telegraph Road. And it was originally put in by the state in the 50s when that was actually part of M130. And then we took it over and we did some work in the 90s to the pumps themselves. So what we thought was going to be a quotation on getting, which I know kind of restating some of what was already in the fact sheet, but for the purposes of the public. So we could take one of them out of service at a time, which we did in May, pulled the first one out, and they took it apart and said, there's no way we can put this thing back together again. So at that point, we said, all right, well, in addition to that, I should back up and say, in addition to the pumps being poor, the discharge line was leaking like a sieve too. So we had to perform some work on the discharge line, which is a single line serving both pumps. So we did approach them about giving us a proposal to replace the pump that they'd already pulled out. Now, we're not 100% sure. I'm asking you for more money than we might have to spend. We don't know the condition of the second pump until we pull it out, but that's a pretty dangerous gamble because not just a gamble, it's totally inappropriate because it's 28-week lead time to get new pumps in place. So we certainly have to have the one that's the old rattle trap one's got to stay in there while we get the other one replaced. So we might not actually spend the total amount if the second pump comes out and it can be rehabilitated. The likelihood that's probably not going to happen. We did not screen them yet as part of the responsible bidder ordinance because the vast majority of this is essentially as a supplier. They're doing a nominal amount of work to install those pumps within the existing station, but they are 90% supply and 10% installation. So I guess if we would like to screen them as a responsible bidder, I have no problem with that. I think they would have no problem meeting that. The challenge is if for some reason they didn't meet that, I don't know where else to go with it. So there would be a concern that if we weren't able to get them approved as a responsible bidder, are we hung up in the ether waiting for a contractor that we can find? Well, I am a little concerned. We're going to be in January before we get the first pump put back in. So I didn't quite answer the question as to are they a responsible bidder or not. Officially, right now, they are not because they have not been screened, but we have not asked them to either. If it's council's prerogative to do so, we will certainly have them go through that process. I have confidence that they will be able to reach that threshold, but you're correct, Councilman. The $200,000 award is over the $175,000 threshold.
A couple of follow-up questions. Would it be prudent, because at this point in time, it was made eminently clear by the fact sheet that you believe these to be, they are eminently qualified to do the work that we are asking them to do. I don't think that that's under question. You also made note of if we did have them fill out the paperwork, you think that they would do fine. At this point in time, at the time of the award being made, though, they are not. I'm wondering if it's necessary to include a clause in the motion to also waive the responsible bidder ordinance in this particular case, given the circumstances that we're surrounding. I'll leave that one for the attorney. A couple of additional follow-up questions. If we buy the pump, because of the long lead time, because if we need it now. We
Yeah.
can't wait 28 weeks with a hole in the ground. What do we do if we don't? You're going to say install it either way, because I know you've warned us in the past about the city being a holder of supplies and equipment for future projects, on the chance that a contractor comes in and says, "Well, this is your equipment. You asked us to install this, and if it doesn't work as spec, we don't own this thing."
I think I know what you're asking. Basically, am I asking council to just go ahead and replace both pumps right now? The answer to that's yes. Because I don't think we can take the chance that we're going to wait 28 weeks and then pull the second one out of the ground, then wait a second 28 weeks. Because I'm going to be standing here at this time next year still waiting for the second pump to come in.
And if one of the pumps is shot, how close is the other to the end of life, even if that isn't now?
I think it would be largely irresponsible of us not to just go ahead and replace both of them after 31 years. So, but I don't want to say, hey, Pat said go ahead and spend this money. We came in, and this pump's not in too bad shape. It's possible that pump, if it comes out like that, could have some salvage value that we could approach other entities that might be interested in purchasing that from us. So that would be, we potentially could get some of that revenue back. I didn't get into all that detail in the fact sheet because there's too many kind of what ifs in there, and I'm already fairly wordy and didn't want to confuse the issue even more. But that is something that we could do, is there certainly may be some parts available that we could scrap out, sell to other entities. If they were potentially good enough, Kennedy might want some back. I don't know. I mean, they might purchase some back from us. I don't know all that. I want to give you a top end now so we can get these ordered so that by January I can get the first one in, and as soon as that one's in and running, I can pull the second one out and replace that right away.
I do believe that Director Lewis had an interesting point that he made regarding the cases in which we only have one bidder. And there have been cases where we've waived the responsible bidder ordinances in the past. I don't know if that's why. I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that your office deals with this on a day-to-day basis, and I haven't quite frankly looked at it since we voted on it. Is there a clause in there, I seem to remember, where if there's only one bidder, that it's instantly waived and we get to go with the person who put in the bid? Now, in this particular circumstance, the fact that we didn't bid it
Right.
kind of makes that problematic.
That's
but
correct.
We all understand why we didn't bid it, because this is an ongoing, evolving project from a prior project because there was issues.
As I've made, I don't want to belabor this point, but this was one of the concerns that we had as an engineering department when we started reviewing this ordinance, is because the last few years have been a contractor's market. We're not seeing the type, when I first started with the city 25 years ago, we were getting 8-9 bidders for a project. And particularly for things like this where we want to get equipment, and this is kind of on the margin between what is truly a contract and a supply purchase. They're doing a nominal amount of work to install it, but like I said, 90% of the value in this is in the materials themselves. It's just, it makes more sense for them to hook it up than for us to fool around hooking it up, which we theoretically could do. But that is somewhat problematic because we didn't bid it, and the reason we didn't bid it, one, is we thought we were just getting them to look at it and do some rehab work, which then turned into my hair's on fire. I got to hurry up and do something here. So yeah, it's not the standard procedure. It's not the standard protocol. I feel a little bit bad that we didn't put it in the CIP, but frankly, we didn't know these issues were that bad until we started seeing it later in the fall and winter. So is it in the ordinance? I'd have to go back and look. I believe that there is some provision that if there's only a single bidder that it can be automatically waived. But I don't remember if it's automatic or if council has to act on it.
These items have come to the council before where we've had individual bidders, or I'll say the only sole source of being able to do the work. This is kind of a unique circumstance. I'm going to just weigh in on my first comment. When I read this and thinking about, not just the cost, but the importance of what that is and how we be responsible in how we do replace both of them. I don't think that's in question. But then I saw the photographs, and that was going to be my comment on this particular item if it came forward. I really appreciate the photographs that were in there, because I was surprised at one point that was even functioning when I saw a couple of the pieces that were either cracked, broke, or the blades so worn down and chipped off. But I'm not going to say the other is going to be just as bad, but I don't know that we could do otherwise. But your point's well taken, Councilman, is we find ourselves in just another item that comes forward that's necessarily not in conflict, but comes to the discussion on the responsible bidder ordinance. We have put in some previous motions and to waive the responsible bid ordinance in the motion. I don't know that makes a difference or not. I mean, I understand why, and we've done it before. I don't see if, I'm trying to think of why we would or wouldn't in this case. I'm looking at the city attorney. It doesn't change any responsibility, liability, or others. It's just that we're moving forward with what we have, like we've done in other circumstances that are unique. I'd count this as a unique experience, for my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't object if the council wanted to make that a condition. I mean, there's no philosophical problem, and quite frankly, I apologize that wasn't really considered and addressed in the fact sheet, because it was, again, for the reasons I cited.
Mr. Buds, any thoughts on that?
Your Honor, I would just say that we obviously have done sole source procurement in the past. That's a section of the same ordinance, section on purchasing and contracts, where the responsible bidder sections are located. So I think if Mr. Lewis is making the case that both this may fall under sole source type items, that look, this is one of the few, if any, providers that can provide these pumps. And also, I think the follow-on to that is, even if that were to somehow be in question, then you would have under the responsible bidder side, there are definitely some language in there about applying to construction contracts. This is one of those gray area ones, in my opinion, where if I'm just buying an item to be installed, is that someone that's going to have, for instance, an apprenticeship program? Well, no, not if you're just an equipment supplier. Obviously, here there's some discussion of install. I personally, as long as Mr. Lewis is comfortable with it, think that under 114.7, this is one where it would be considered sole source, and I think the council would have the ability to proceed forward and under those provisions and waive those other items.
Thank you. Councilman Feller?
If you think that they would do well either way, I have to imagine that it would reflect well on them in the future if they went and filled out the pre-qualification paperwork either way, regardless of the result of this particular vote. I can't imagine that something like that hurts them.
I don't want to commit that they will reach the 80-point threshold, because I don't know what their corporate structure looks like. We go back to the apprenticeship programs and things like that, and while they...
The comment is, no, we can't be assured unless we went through it.
No, and what happens if they don't make it? Do I need to hold for 3 weeks to order the pumps while that certification is pending, or do I need to, because the council would need to waive that? Then if we ask the question and the answer is no, I really can't go ahead with the award for 3 more weeks.
Well, I'm fine waiving the clause in this particular circumstance going forward. And if the attorney feels comfortable that this is a sole source project in the future that we're not going to find other suppliers on anyway, then I think that they're going to find themselves in a situation where they're going to have an out either way.
Yeah.
But even if they have an out, I still think that it probably would be best practice.
I think what I'm hearing is that there is general support for proceeding forward with this particular agenda item,
Yeah,
but that
you
perhaps
heard
the
correctly.
councilman is suggesting that if they're going to have additional business with the city, it may behoove them to consider submitting that so that we don't have that question in the future.
I have no objection to requesting that they submit that information on our behalf, as long as, I just want to make it clear I didn't have to wait for 3 weeks, so
Yeah.
that's,
Make a motion?
Is there an alternative clause that needs to be added, or is it good as is? In that case, I would
Right.
make a motion that a contract be entered into with Kennedy Industries for the replacement of both pumps for the West End North Custer Storm Pump Station in the amount of $182,310, and that a total of $200,000 be authorized to include a 10% contingency, that an additional $126,000 be appropriated to complete the funding package, that a formal competitive bidding process be waived, that the Director of Engineering and Public Services or his designee be authorized to enter into any necessary agreements, and that the Finance Director and Assistant City Manager be authorized to make any necessary transfers within the major and local street funds, reappropriate capital project allocations, and/or allocate funds to the correct fiscal year.
It's a motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Stilgrave on item 4756, the West Elm Avenue Storm Pumping Station Replacement of Pumps. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Stilgrave. Yes. Vining. Jermaine.
Yes.
Lamore. Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
I have no other items.
No
this
other
evening.
items. It is July, council comments. Councilman Hayter.
I know it's a little bit early, but I want to let everybody know that on August 31st, the Monroe Lenawee AFL-CIO will be having their Labor Day Parade and Labor Day Festival. Parade starts at noon. Anybody interested in participating, get with the Monroe Lenawee AFL-CIO. And at 1 o'clock, we will be over at St. Mary's Park with bands and kids zone and food trucks. So please come out and support the AFL-CIO on August 31st.
Very good. Councilman Stilgrave.
The only thing I have is the concert series are continuing on Thursday nights. That's it.
Councilwoman Vining.
Thank you, Your Honor. So tonight in the work session, we had the architects from Kohler Architects present information on the new campus that the city is working on over near Labor Park. That'll include the Navarre Library, the Learning Bank, and the Opportunity Center at ALCC. And I had a few questions and a few suggestions. And one of the reasons why I wanted to go into it at the meeting, this is the first, or at least the largest presentation that we've had publicly that I can recall since we started working on the project. And it would be my hope that we do speak to the public about the project, because a lot of people don't remember, because we started the project so long ago, I think in 2021. There were some funding issues and other things. A lot of people that live in the immediate area are not even aware that this is a project that is ongoing. And, you know, it would be weird to wake up in November, see the library being demolished and wondering, hey, what's going on? So I think it is important that when we're building a public facility, and we were blessed to receive an appropriation from the state of Michigan, I believe it was $7.8 million. And I'm sure we exceeded that dollar amount, and this will probably be one of the largest builds that we've done in the city in recent years that I can remember. I think the fire station turned out to be around 4 to 6 million or something, so it even exceeds that. And we were very intentional about including the public in the fire station build, probably because we wanted it to go for bond, and as a bond proposal, and also with the proposed police station that the people voted down. But we were very intentional about sharing information. And so, in my opinion, I think it's important to do that with all public facility builds, that we share as much information. I mean, it's an exciting project. It looks like it's going to be such a beautiful facility and benefit not just the neighborhood but the entire city. I think is something that we should be proud of and share as much as we can. And so I hope, because this is getting ready to go to AUK, which in August, and then up for bid it out for construction in September. I think it's something that we should be proud to share with the community, and I hope that we put a piece in this whole process that we do exactly that, and that is not just one day, boom, we see some bulldozers out there, and hey, what's going on? So I was happy to be able to ask and then asked a few questions today and share our concerns. I don't want it to be, I don't want to seem like I'm only advocating for the library, but I do work there. And so I hear concerns from the staff, and I know staff here has worked with our library director, but a lot of us know when you're a frontline worker and it's going to affect you directly, you can have a lot of concerns and questions. So I hope as we move, it seems quickly into this project, that we will share some of this. And like I said, it's a beautiful project, and it's going to benefit the community and our entire city. And I think we should talk about it. If that's a newspaper article or maybe in the city newsletter, I think it's something worth talking about. And so that's all I had to say this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Germaini?
Thank you. I just want to thank Mark and Matt for all their hard work and all these projects that we have going on, because I'm sure it's overwhelming, and great presentation, Matt. Thank you.
Councilman Lamore?
Thank you, Your Honor. One of the items on our consent agenda, the West Side grade separation. Excited to see that going through, or at least coming closer to fruition. I know there's some residents, especially on Elman Toll, that are curious about that. We're not quite etched in stone yet, but we're getting ever so closer on that. Number 2 on my list, was there any flooding reported in the St. Mary's Gardens area? And if so, did those residents seek or take part in the city's new storm sewer program? That'd probably be more of a question for Mr. Lewis. And we can get that answer later if you'd like. And last but not least, can we get Mr. Vanasacker either an acronym or a nickname for his job title? Everybody seems to stumble over that, and I'm not one of the fewest ones to do it. So it'd be appreciated if we can find a different title or a different acronym for him. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Fellner?
The DMBN wine crawl is this Friday. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. Councilman Stelgrave mentioned the concerts in the park, but this last week, the Glow Monroe was at St. Mary Park. It was a great turnout throughout the entire day. Some really great, I'll say, presentations and message. It was well attended. I want to thank those that put that together, and of course all the sponsors that were listed out there within the park for their support to that. The concert park. Also, I wanted to discuss or bring up the fact that we have a sister city in Hofu, Japan, and our students are currently in Japan in the student exchange. It's a educational and cultural exchange. We have 5 students that are there from schools across the county. 2 are from Monroe Public Schools, and they're there now their first week, and they'll be there for a second week, and in returning a week from tomorrow. At the same time, on July 25th, the 6 Hofu Japanese students will be arriving, starting with a welcoming here, and it's open to the public if you'd like to come. to see how our volunteer group, the Monroe International Friendship Association, which is our residents and throughout our communities, who put together the program, find host families, and also the activities for the students while they're here. It starts the next morning early with English class as well. So it's just a great, as I said, educational opportunity. And they'll be, the Japanese students will be here through August 8th. So if you see the students out and about or different activities, introduce yourself, say hello. They always want to practice their English. So I don't know if you don't know Japanese, that's okay, because they're probably going to have an interpreter if you need to have that as well. I appreciate that Councilman Vining brought up about the presentation at the work session. I want to thank Kohler and Woody Hoffer for presenting. Obviously, it's about, as they stated, it's about 80%. We still have a ways to go for final. They'll take some of the comments we had today. I did put a note on here, Councilman, you said it. I think it's a great topic for the newsletter. I think it's so, I know there's notes, I saw Mr. Robinson write as well. So I think, they're always coming to staff for different thoughts put in. It's probably appropriate at this point. Now it's been presented here. Obviously, we've had different work sessions. We've had it at council meetings and discussions. I know there was some community presentation. Think back to when that first was and the first rendering of what that was. But I think about where we started, and that was maybe some of the, I'll say, financial restrictions or also space that we heard about today. And how do we make this kind of the shared space of the partners that are currently involved? But there was an entity and a partner in here that's not going to get included in the facility at this time or adjoining facility, and that's the Joe's Boxing. And I think everybody is looking for that, and we know that's important. It's important to our community, but that was not part of the presentation. If we put that in there, I always say, what are we not going to have there? And so it's, 3 or 4 different things that this was about, and in the space within the funding we had. And of course, when you get $7.8 million, you can't figure out why you can't do it all. As a couple of years went by, as we're trying to get things organized, as well as some additional renderings, the prices exceeded beyond that amount. However, I don't want to say we don't give up, we don't forget. We know why we started this project. We knew all the aspects of why it was, not only for the youth, but also the adults, but also the importance that program has within our community. Because it's not just about boxing, it's about learning life skills and mentoring. We haven't forgot that. And I want to thank the staff, because while we didn't get it, the funding to do it all, the staff has already moved forward with another source of funding, and hopefully through the community projects in Senator Peters' office, that we've pushed that through, and hopefully we'll find some other funding. Doesn't mean we're going to stop and wait, because if we do that, then it's just going to cost more later. But if we can find the funding that'll take to include the Joe's Boxing facility, whether it's incorporated attached to the building or it's on the property that we have next to, we still have that as an important part of the entire complex that we talked about during the meeting. So as we work through those things of what we like or maybe not like, what we might want to change, what's being presented, those are the conversations that are ongoing, and that'll come back to us probably in August, because they're looking to, as it was stated, put the bid out in September, and also taking recognition of the clerk's role when you talk about elections, because that is a location which is a polling place, and I don't think we should be starting to do construction before that time. And I appreciate Clerk Lavoie and her input in that aspect, and that we all recognize that disruption's enough when you do construction, but not necessary to do it to cause problems elsewhere. So those are my comments for this evening. Clerk Treasurer Lavoie.
Yes, and I do appreciate everyone hearing me and respecting the fact that the November election, Precinct 3 South needs to stay right where it is for now. So I appreciate that. Additionally, I just want to reassure voters who are voting absentee that if they realize that they've crossed over and voted in 2 columns on their ballot, it is not too late to spoil that ballot. So please just contact the clerk's office. And just to keep in mind that if you are an absentee voter, One of the best ways to help double check that is to come out for early voting, which will be beginning July 27th, because you can bring your absentee ballot here to council chambers. We'll have a precinct set up beginning July 27th in accordance with state law, and you'll be able to actually feed your absentee ballot into the tabulator yourself, and you'll know in that instant that it counted or that there was an issue with it, and it'll reject it and we'll spoil it and we'll get you all squared away. So there are a couple of safety nets, so to speak, for absentee voters. If they're not 100% certain that they filled their ballot out correctly, they can feed it into the tabulator themselves. There will be more information. We've had something in the newsletter, and Amy and Jody in communications are working with me very closely to continue to spread the word. So, but I know sometimes I give a lot of information. The bottom line is just call the clerk's office if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to walk you through it.
Thank you. I thought of two things. One that was meant to speak with the clerk about, because she sent an email to the council members that are for the public accuracy test, and if you could speak to that, because it is open and what that means.
The public accuracy test is an open meeting, and thank you for the reminder. It is tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. here in council chambers, and the Election Commission, which in the city of Monroe happens to be the city council members, will convene, and they will actually test ballots in the tabulator, in a randomly chosen tabulator that will be used on election day. They'll test that tabulator, precincts 1 through 6, and determine, make sure that it is working and that it's tabulating the ballots correctly. It is an open meeting, and it probably will have anywhere from 28 to 39 ballots or so to feed through. So it takes a little bit of time, but it's well worth it, because that's how we've already done pre-testing on this. This is a public test to ensure that the machine and the equipment is working. So that'll be tomorrow morning.
Thank you. And the last comment I had a note here that I passed by. The Martin Luther King Bridge is open, and it's open with some still minor things to be done. So the lights aren't on yet because there's a control box that obviously is not there. So we're looking to make sure that we get that, I'll say, installed, so we can test the lighting, see what it's going to look like from the lighting aspect. I can tell you there's many positive comments on Sunday when I was at the Glow Monroe, and then of course the concert series before that. And it's they're very thankful. One, because you want to walk over it and can park, but the other part is it's functional and operating now. So once we get the control box installed, there'll be a date in the future that will have I'll say a rededication of the bridge once it's complete and whole. And those will go out through the newsletter here at council and otherwise. So that was my last item. City Manager Robinson.
I have no further comments since you took the one I was going to have.
Thank you. So next is citizens' comment. If there's comments from those present here this evening, please be mindful to step to the podium, state your name, jurisdiction of residence, and your comment in 3 minutes. Any comments from those present here this evening? Sorry to take a couple of your comments.
You're right out of my mouth. Elliot James, 633 Stone Street, Monroe, Michigan. The first one was the bridge.
Yeah.
The second one was the boxing LLC. The community center has always been known for boxing, and we don't have a boxing area, and this is it's terrible. The third one is the mission. Who would be, if there's someone that messes up the value or does something against this mission statement, what is the punishment? Or is there any punishment? That's what I would like to know.
So that's a good question, because this comes up periodically. We have an ethics committee, which is residents that serve. I'm not saying that's what would go to immediately, but we also have our employment agreements we have with our employees. So whether it's employees, whether it's administration, staff, or council, if there's things that are, I'll say, well, it go through the Human Resources Division first. I'm gonna look at Mr. Robinson. He may have Manager Robinson may have a comment, but so when there's, I'll say, violations of policy, or as we move through it through our mission and our, vision and values, is it a contractual item? Is it a policy item? And all those would go to the city manager as well as the human resource director, Dr. Everly, and then it would be evaluated of where that is, I'll say, responded to. It may be internally, it could be through the ethics board if it rises to that level. And they have there's a whole different chapter of that, which is one of our boards and commissions as well. I guess I started, and I'm looking at Mr. Robinson. I don't know if you have anything further at this point, or?
No, it's, as you understand, all of our collective bargaining units all have codes of conduct and disciplinary processes in those areas. These things, the core values you talk about would be something that would fall under our code of conduct kind of values that are here. And if there was a breach of that, then we received a complaint. Obviously, there'd be an investigation into the complaint. And then we deem, is it a founded complaint or an unfounded complaint based on whatever the complaint would be. And then the appropriate action would be taken place between my office and the human resource director, or if it rose to a level where it needed to go in front of the ethics committee.
Mr. James, and I'll try not to read your mind next time.
Keep on doing it.
Other comments from those present here this evening? Any comments? And we have some things to do afterwards. Councilman Lamore?
Motion to go in closed session.
Okay, we have to state the purpose for the closed session, and which of course is the attorney-client privilege correspondence, and discuss pending litigation regarding Nathan Carr.
Yes, that's my statement right there, my motion.
Support was, and Councilman Felder. There's a motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder, to go into closed executive session. Clerk, please call the roll.
Steelgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. And thank you all for being here this evening.